Did social media, that is Facebook, Twitter, and company, take it upon themselves to intervene in the 2020 election?
Instead of just only focusing on media, it's becoming clearer and clearer that we also need to pay attention to what social media is doing, what the tech giants are doing out there, to expand that, because that's where so many people today, so many Americans, millions, even billions, get their news from.
Facebook has 2.7 billion users, which is the equivalent of the entire population of the two most populous countries in the world, China and India. Google, 92% of search around the world is controlled by Google.
Social media has become almost as important as the media, maybe more important as the media. They've hired young people, by the thousands, right out of the universities, and most of these young people are completely advocating liberals, and they're in the game to suffocate conservatives, suffocate conservative voices, populism.
Perhaps these big tech giants were, in their minds, atoning for somehow having allowed Trump's unexpected win in 2016 in the first place.
There were videos out there that people produced that showed the Google bosses were very upset that they didn't do enough to stop President Trump. They almost had therapy sessions and crying sessions. So for the next 4 years, we've seen with the banning of Roger Stone, Laura Loomer, Milo Yiannopoulos, all sorts of conservatives' voices.
Critics argue that big tech was clearly biased for Biden's campaign and against Trump's. For example, millions of Americans never heard about the Hunter Biden laptop scandal reported by a mainstream newspaper.
The New York Post, founded by Alexander Hamilton in the 1800s. They've got the laptop of Hunter Biden, and in there was troves of information on his dealings from China and Ukraine and the millions they made.
Twitter suspended the New York Post account and started suspending anybody who posted this story. So what in effect they did, they censored it. And Twitter suspended the New York Post story for 17 days. And so that was all the time leading up to the election, to the point where more than a third of Democrat voters, more than a third of Biden voters had never heard of the story.
On top of that, Facebook directly influenced the election in Georgia through a generous political donation to the left.
You find out Facebook's giving $250 million through one of their not-for-profits to the Georgia Democratic Party for, canvassing and going out and drawing out the vote. So they played a major part in helping elect Joe Biden.
Then, after the election, with all the questions of irregularities, particularly in the swing states, Trump and his followers alleged voter fraud because of a plethora of incidents. But big tech flagged all these concerns as false allegations. And then came January 6, 2021, and the rushing of the Capitol.
In the aftermath, big tech companies scrambled to purge violent rhetoric. Twitter banned President Trump, cutting off his favorite link to supporters.
I think big tech has made a terrible mistake and very, very bad for our country.
After this incident, in the last days of the Trump administration, Twitter and Facebook took it upon themselves to censor the President of the United States, banning him from their platforms.
Think about this, the President of the US had 89 million followers, and Twitter just purged him, just knocked him off.
This whole story of the 2020 election and its aftermath is a part of the growing phenomenon of big tech yielding inordinate influence in our world.
When you talk about Silicon Valley, you are talking about an industry with hundreds of billions of dollars flowing through it on a constant basis to build new tech, to reach minds and change minds. And the conservatives are behind in the game.
Well, essentially, these big tech companies are holding themselves out as being the new virtual public square. They are now acting in many ways as kind of the ticket takers as to who can come in. If you got a liberal ticket, come on in. You got a conservative ticket, not so sure. Let's see what you've got to say. That's not free speech, and when speech is no longer free, that's a problem for all of society, and people need to realize that.
Social media isn't the future of communications, it's the present of communications. There are a lot of older people who may not be using social media, but everybody who's under the age of 40 is, which is why we have this enormous audience, and it's disproportionately young. 70% of the people who listen to my conservative podcast, a very conservative podcast, are under the age of 35. So that's a big number of young people who are aware of our content.
I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. I'm very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas.
One of the ways this left-wing censorship of Christian and conservative content works is through algorithms, basically programming the computers to make such decisions. One computer expert said that algorithms are opinions embedded in computer code.
An algorithm determines how a computer thinks. It's basically a lot of if statements. And it says, if this happens, then do that. And there's hundreds of these, if not thousands of if statements in a computer program.
One of these subtle or not so subtle ways in which this social media censorship is done is by clamping down on so-called hate speech. And who gets to define what hate speech is? Well, groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, the SPLC.
So Google and Facebook and YouTube, a lot of the social media companies will uncritically look at reports from supposedly neutral arbiters like the SPLC or like Media Matters or like PolitiFact, and all of which lean left at the very least. And then they'll say, well, you know, if the SPLC says it's a hate group, that must mean it's a hate group. Like, well, who died and made the SPLC God? Like, how exactly did that work? How does the SPLC, which has promoted untruth on a variety of topics, suddenly become the great arbiter of what constitutes hateful speech? Everybody who disagrees with the hard left position, according to the SPLC, is borderline a hate group. There's no question that on YouTube the social issues are the hot button. Everything from race to abortion to same-sex marriage to transgenderism. If you violate the left's standards of political correctness here, then there's a good shot they're going to demonetize you. They'll find that you run afoul of their community standards. If you take a socially unapproved stance on one of these issues, there's a good shot that YouTube will demonetize you or Facebook will crack down on you.
It's really hard to create a startup and to compete with these huge giant tech companies that are already there. Yeah. So it's really hard for people to compete with that. Without these tech companies' help, it's really hard for them to grow, for people to realize that they exist. Yeah. So that's a problem too.
When a conservative alternative to Twitter arose, Parler, a tidal wave of conservatives migrated there, at which point the big tech giants ganged up on Parler to try and effectively kill it.
But what this really points to is the danger for all conservative organizations, all Christian organizations, all organizations that the woke left around the world doesn't like. Because what happened to Parler is they didn't just lose Amazon and Google and Apple. They lost their lawyers who were getting death threats. They lost all the businesses they worked with. They were effectively deplatformed across the board. What people have been saying for years, particularly conservatives have been saying this, oh, if you don't like that, the political stance of a company, go start your own. But that's no longer possible. What you have to do is you have to start your own company. You have to start your own server company, your own newsletter company, your own web services company, your own bank, your own credit card company, your own, and go down the line. It's everything from literally where you rent to how you deliver your services. They can take them all away, and that is the left's new strategy. So when we're talking about online, it's not about free speech. It's simply about freedom.